Okay, today we're starting with the 8th verse of Genesis 1:8, and it begins, Vayikra Elokim larakia shamayim vayerev vayiveka yom echad, Yom Sheni, sorry. And God called to the firmament heaven, and it was evening and it was morning, day 2. The way we are going to be translating the verse is, and by association of a power of boundaries with an expansive filter balance is formed, and there is a power of gloom and there's a power of glow illuminating change. So we're going to go through the words and show you how the words have a different meaning and how there's a whole different aspect here. There is no day 2, but what the 2 means. So this is actually the last verse of day 2, or of the second level of creation. There are 7 levels of creation. This is level 2. And this is where a second level of creation is being exposed and completed. The last 3 verses were describing what was being defined and redefined in order for another revelation to happen within the creation, and this is the end of it. It designates change to occur for a specific creation to form. In creation, a calling means something that's called or brought forth. This verse defines in a general sense, the character that is formed. This verse also tells us the purpose of the 2 previous verses is to bring sweetness and change into existence. The sweetness allows comprehension, while the change allows things not to become stuck. And we will see that shortly. And it's a very interesting thing, because very often when we are creating, we are forming something, we have ideas, and ideas get stuck, sometimes in our thought, sometimes in the process, and it doesn't always eventuate. And the same thing within the creation that the Creator did. There are things that evolve and are created one thing from the other, and things that get stuck in different places. Like human beings evolve, but many people are stuck. So even they're evolving, it's just within a place that's stuck, so it's going backwards. But here creation is going forward, so nothing gets stuck, and nothing gets left behind. So the verse starts Vayikra, and he called, but Vayikra we translated and by association of. By association means something is being invited here. A power of boundaries. Each level of creation needs some type of description or boundary, a stage, in order to bring it forth. Without the stage, you can't stage something. So it's bringing something forth in creation through this power, whatever it is here, with an expansive filter. The expansive filter is not just a filter, but it has to be expansive because it's forming an opening that creates expansion. So it's not a filter that's trying to contract things and hold things back, but a filter that is allowing things to expand as it comes through it. A balance is formed. Each level has its own need and balance. Every time something happens, you have to rebalance the whole situation, the whole story, the whole happening. Because every move is a move not just of its own, it's a move in association with everything else that's going on. So let's say you're building a house, for example. When you do one thing, you have to see what do you do next. And each stage you have to figure out how you're doing it. So on paper it looks good one way, but when you're doing it, sometimes you have to change things. And the same thing in a person's personal growth. Each day changes. We feel differently, things happen differently, and each day we need to rebalance ourselves. But still essentially the same person, but something's different, and we need to rebalance with it, whatever that is, even if we can't define it. There is a power of revealing individual powers in the creation, and there's a power of gloom, like an overcast day where the light is not shining through, and there's a power, the ability of glow. This brings out sweetness from the gloom, illuminating each stage in creation. Makes forms that can illuminate, and illuminating change, because in order for the purpose of creation to actuate, there has to be change. If everything is just exactly the way it's created, then there's no purpose in the creation. It needs to be set up so things can shift and change and move, and that's why the word sheni, which also means two, also means change. So a basic thought in this verse is that in the creation, the Creator has no need to experience matter in order to comprehend balance. Much of our wisdom as human beings comes from our experience. And this is very different from ancient man. We often look back and wonder, how is it that ancient man could build such things, had knowledge of things? We find things in archaeology, things that they knew about. Where did they get this information? How did they know it? But because they were connected with the nature and associated much more open with the creator energy and creation, the knowledge was there instantly. They asked, they got the answer. They wanted to know, they were able to do things because of their openness with the creator and forces of nature. Over time, we've blocked ourselves. Through our experiences, we've learned certain things, but we've created other blockages, and these blockages don't allow us to learn just from being open and sensitive. That's why we have to do things in a very scientific way, by observation. We observe things we know. They did not need to observe things in order to know things. It was an intrinsic knowledge of knowing because of their openness and connection with the Creator and creation. And that's difficult for many people to comprehend. But we have that ability. There are many times people feel things. They don't know where the thought comes from, where the feeling comes from. But when they look at what happens, they realize that feeling or thought was right. It was correct. So there is a universal knowledge that we have that transcends our ability of thinking and logic and science. Often we use boundaries of our existence to balance the thoughts we have, the feelings, experiences. We have something, but then we have to balance it. And we create a new heaven for ourselves. Whatever it is, we have a circumstance and we become happy, and we say, this is heaven, I'm happy now, everything is good. Why is everything good? Because we've blocked out the bad, we've blocked out the negativity, we've blocked out whatever the issues are. So a lot of times people think everything's good. Well, how's everything? Everything's fine. Because they've blocked out the issues. They're not dealing with it. I'm not talking about a guy says fine because he doesn't want to talk about it. I'm talking about people block it out. So a lot of people think they're in heaven, everything's fine, but it's the heaven they've created for themselves and put themselves into. It's not a real heaven. It's just an imaginary heaven. Now, after the Creator expresses a desire for creation, then balance has to be brought into it to give direction to that creation. It's nice the Creator has a desire, but we have to put it somewhere. So with the wisdom of ups and downs and experiences all around us, we become partners in that creation and direction of the creation. By the choices we make, it gives direction. It's very strange. You would say the Creator wants one thing to go and finish over here, but the Creator has made us part of the creation. So our choices take it on different journeys. And that's what the Creator wants, those journeys, for whatever reason. But those journeys give direction to where things go and how they happen. So if society becomes destructive, it takes society through a journey of destruction and then rebuilding. Now, do people learn their lessons? Not necessarily, because they keep repeating the same things. But that's the journey mankind takes. So, while we've gone on these journeys and we've been stuck in places, when things fall apart, when the system falls apart, when destruction occurs, we have an ability to then look, okay, what is it that we need to change in the direction in what we were doing? Where were we stuck? Where do we need to change? What usually happens is that people make some changes and then go back to the nature they had before and to the place they're stuck. Now we're living in a world, in today's world, where no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow more than ever before. No one knows what destruction is going to occur, whether it's natural, whether it's man-made. No one knows what changes are going to occur. And so this means that we have to really look at ourselves to say, what do we need to do to create the proper shift so that the future can be the way it has been? Till now, the future's been directed by people who are corrupt, people who have agendas, people who want for themselves, but it hasn't been a unity among people. Now we have the ability to come together and to share and build with each other a future that's balanced with nature, balanced with the world and the Creator, and pull things back so it goes in the right direction. The ability is here, as long as we take the opportunity. So the Creator knows the balance in each move, and that's the way nature was created. That all nature was balanced. We as people have taken things out of nature, extrapolated, taken things out. On their own, taking those things out, we've created poisons, which create other imbalances. But if we understand that nature holds a balance, then we can go back to nature and not extrapolate, but become part with it and listen to how to use those things within nature. So, going back to the translation of the verse, Vayikra, and God, Elohim, and God called, we translate as association. The word Vayikra, Kara, means meeting, connecting, gathering, summoning. In Jeremiah, it uses the word summoning together in chapter 17. In Exodus, it says he's coming to meet you, Aaron. So there are different meanings of the word. Now we use association, but you could use other words to translate it as well, depending on how you're going to understand the flow of what's going on. A power of boundaries. In Kabbalah and Chassidus, this is called Koyach HaTzimtzum v'Hagbala. Power of Tzimtzum, contraction, and Hagbala, limitation. A balance is formed. That's the word Shamayim, heaven. We translate it as balance because it has two words. There are actually many variances of how you split up the word Shamayim. Mayim, you can lift it as lift up, carry. It's also a mixture of Eish and Mayim, fire and water. And so the Sham Mayim, there is water also, or there is flow. It varies. That's where two mems come together and one goes out. When you put two words together, you take out a letter, so it would be that way there. An expansive filter. The word Rakia. The word Rakia, expansive filter, in Job, chapter 37, the word Rakia means to stretch out. It's a filter. The reason we call it filter because it separates that which is happening in creation, so that it's filtered. It filters that which should happen for future generations. So when the creation happens, there's a flow, there's a desire, tremendous energy. This filter, it keeps that energy where it is, and allows the energy that is for future creation to go through. So that's how it filters it out. Gloom. In Psalms it says cloud and gloom surround him. Erev, evening, is also idea of gloom. Change. Sheni is also the idea of shinu, change. In Malachi it says, I, Hashem, have not changed. It also means different. In the book of Esther it says, and their religion is different. It means inconsistent or different. In Proverbs, do not mix with inconsistent people, chapter 24. So these words do have different meanings, and actually Erev also is Arev, means sweet, which then that will have other meanings as we'll talk about later.
Why did God feel compelled to say, I have not changed?
Why did God feel compelled to say, I have not changed? Okay, that is Malachi, and if it's not actually the discussion of what we're doing here, I was just using it to show that the word shinoi, sheni, instead of two, can also mean changed. Now, there in Malachi, it's talking a little bit different, and you can look it up there and see how it fits into the verses there, why it says that. But many times people do think, and in the Torah there's the idea where God says one thing and then does something else, or makes one condition then does something else. You see a lot of variances. So sometimes you think because these variances there, God changes, so sometimes you need to be told that nothing has changed. God doesn't change, nothing has changed, and therefore what he says doesn't change, but what he changes is based on circumstances, not that he has changed. And many times we do things based on circumstances. For example, we live in a city, we live in an area where there are buildings, there are many things here, and if we want to change something, we have to work with the buildings that are here. Now, 100 years ago, they didn't have to change this place with buildings. It was farmland. So the change would have been different. So every circumstance is different, how you apply it, but the creator or the person doing it hasn't changed because the circumstances have. So it's just how we apply things sometimes. Okay, another, since there are different ways of translating the words, I'll give you two other ways of translating the verse. One is designated through boundaries, a firmness describing the surge, and it became mixed, and it's glowing, illuminating change. Or invited. It can be invited by description. Perpetual, elevated aspect of Mayim, and it is sweet, and it's caring, Revelation 2. So these are just an understanding. The verse can have different meanings based on the words, and so sometimes we have questions on what something means or how to understand it, and sometimes you go to a different way of translating or using the word, and then it gives the whole verse a different perspective, and you can understand it from that way. So if you just translate in a simple way, it has no meaning. If you look at the different meanings, it brings other meanings into it. And not one is more right than the other, but each one gives you another insight into it. Okay. And, back at the beginning of the verse, when it says and, it means another addition is going on here. As we said, the vav, which is and, has a yud at the top and a line down. It's bringing something down from a higher to another level, from one place to another. So it's another addition that brings forth other elements in creation to deal with the settling, the immense surge of wisdom and understanding that comes into creation. When there's a lot of power, a lot of knowledge, you can blow your mind. You blow the fuse because you have too much information. And when we have too much information, we cannot contain it. So either your mind explodes or you block it out. So in here, there's so much, the knowledge and wisdom and understanding of the Creator is so great, there has to be something that limits it to be more specific, or the creation that will occur won't be able to hold it. There has to be made specifically for each matter individually, which happens as we continue going through the next stages. Association, it's a calling forth of these elements. Vayikra also means invited. It means that there's a balance associated with the rakia. Refers that is giving it a quality or a character of Shamayim, but not that it's its essence. In other words, it's Vayikra Lekim La Rakia Shamayim. Hashem called the Rakia Shamayim. Not that the Rakia is Shamayim, but that the Rakia has a quality of Shamayim, a quality of balance. So Shamayim means balance of opposite movements. Vayikra means Hashem is bringing forth to this filter the idea of balance. So the Rakia now has the idea of balance associated with it. Or you could translate that the Rakia was given its own Shamayim. The Rakia was given its own heaven, its own type of balance. So it's either balance, it brought a balance, given a balance for creation, or it itself is given a balance for itself. And in that sense, the word Vayikra can be designated or instilled. Vayikra Lekim Rakia Shamayim, Hashem designated or instilled in the Rakia a balance, which is just for the Rakia itself. So it can either be for the Rakia itself or for further creation, depending how you want to use the word Vayikra and Shamayim. Balance. This balance, in verse 1, it has the word Shamayim. And there we translate as a balance of opposite movements. This Shamayim here, this balance is different than the Shamayim, the balance in the first verse. The first verse, it's a totally comprehensive concept. It includes everything in existence. While this verse is a balance of something specific. So the term is the same, but it is different. It's applied to the individual case, one expansive and one specific. As this is a balance for future generations. But it could be that the surge, it's either balance for the surge, for future generations, in whatever way it is specific here. According to this, we can include here now a different view of the first verse of Genesis. One is that there were many heavens and worlds created before this one, and they were destroyed. The sages teach us there were many heavens and worlds. Now, since Shamayim, the word heaven doesn't mean there's one heaven. It's actually a plural word. The word Rakia is singular. The word Shamayim is plural. There were many types of heavens. And each heaven is in another place in creation. So even the first verse where it says heaven, it could be just the heaven, a general heaven, in relationship to this creation. That doesn't mean there weren't heavens before that and balances before that. Another view is that the word Bereshis also means before. As the Targum says, Bereshis Bekadmin. So, Bereshis Barakim, before everything, Bereshis Barakim Esa Shemaim, there was a heaven, there were other balances before this creation. There was a Shemayim and Aretz before this. And everything was just all one big mixture. So, as we do the same terms in Chumash, the question is, do we take these terms and apply them back to the first verse, and it expands our understanding of the first verse, or is the first verse general, and we don't apply the meaning in other places the same way as we apply in the first verse? There's different ways of, you can think either way, but everything is from the Creator, so it doesn't really matter which way, because we don't exist then, and you can have either perspective. The word Shamayim can be Somayim, elevated aspect of Mayim. And the Mayim here is elevated. That's because the word can be read Sa to lift up Mayim. This name designates how the Rakia relates to other elements that are brought into the forth in creation. That the Rakia is called Shamayim, that it elevates something. And when it elevates something, something becomes elevated and something else is not. So a filter, you normally think of something going through something and it holds back, it filters out something. Here it takes something up, elevates it, and leaves whatever's there. So in a certain sense, you take a jar of nuts and you shake it, and the small ones go to the bottom and the top ones stay on top. So it's in the case, it's like that. It elevates, the movement elevates whatever has to be. And this balance was formed to create a space for the other beings that would be formed in the future, because the flow before wouldn't allow that. So from now on, from this verse, the word Shamayim, heaven, or balance of opposite movements, now refers to the Rakia as well. This means that in addition to whatever people call Shamayim, it's also a filter. The heaven is not just a balance of opposite movements, but it's also a filter, filtering one level to another between two elements. And it can refer to a height or limit of what a person can achieve. You can achieve the sky is the limit. You can achieve the heaven. It's not the heaven of creation, it's the heaven of your limit, of where you are. But the limit of where you are, the Shamayim, the balance that you achieve, or the heaven that you achieve, may still be like an Aretz, like a physical thing, an earth, or a lower level to something beyond that. So now a heaven is not one heaven. Everyone has a different level of balance, whatever that their limit is. So there's revealed in this aspect of creation a gloom. Everything is mixed together. So when there's a mixture, it's gloom, but there's also a sweetness with it. And the glow, the shine, returns in the next stage of creation, illuminating what is instituted is two elements, a higher and a lower level, a revealed and concealed existence. Change. In the creation, the word two is written in a singular sense. The word is also an expression of change, shinui. So sheni, which means two, would also be a singular sense. Something here has changed, but we don't find that change is complete until the next stage of creation. Which also explains why it doesn't say kitayv, because kitayv, that it was good, means actually that it was fit and ready to be used for creation. It's not fit and ready until the next stage when something further is created. Any questions?
So if the word sheni means change, what does it come to tell you?
If the word means change, what does it come to tell you? It tells you that the ability of change is now instituted in creation. We now have the ability to change things. Otherwise, in the beginning, it was just the Creator's desire and will. Now there's ability of change, and therefore we can change things because that was put into the creation. And we do change things. You were created for a purpose, and you're changing the purpose you were created. That's a change.
That's like free will, right?
That's like free will, yes. When you have change, you have free will. Hopefully. What free will is another question. We have will, we have free will, we make choices. Now, whether you call the choice free will or not makes no difference because you make those choices anyway, but the ability of change gives us the ability to go one way or another way, to not change or change, to do it one way or another. So it gives, whether you call it, it's not really free will, it's the ability of change, that things can fluctuate, things can be different than the way they are, things can move from where they are. It's not really about free will so much as things don't have to be stuck the way they are. So a soul comes into a body and it has a difficult time dealing with the world it's in. And because it has a difficult time, the world changes it. Life changes us. when you were younger, you're one way, and then because you had to work, you had to earn money, you had to do things in order to do that, something changed in you. Because you have to live with people, you can't be who you are, you have to change. A lot of things in the world around us we don't do because we want to do it. I mean, we do have a choice. We do it in order to balance with people and with society. And so it changes who we are. So for the body, that's how you relate to the world around you. But for the soul, it's very difficult because the soul is what it is. It doesn't change no matter what the body does, so it becomes painful when the soul is in the body. It's a painful journey for the soul. Which also takes you back to the idea that if everyone was to be spiritual and not relate to the physical, people would be who they are, and there'd be no changing them, there'd be no interaction with other souls, because each one is so stuck in their own way, there's no ability to change, they are what they are and that's it. And in a certain sense, when people pass away, everyone goes to the world of where they came from, and that's where they are. They're stuck there. There isn't, in the spiritual realm, you are what you are. There's no change. Which is why when we come into the body and we work with the body, it can affect an elevation. That's why when someone passes away, we pray for them. What we do here can make the shift in the spiritual realm, which they can't do on their own. And angels, they can only do what they're told. They can't do anything else. So being spiritual doesn't mean you're any better. Even though physical is a hardship, but the ability of change enables things to come forth that wouldn't come forth. Doesn't mean we're going to do that. Doesn't mean we'll achieve that. But it's an opportunity and a possibility. And so we need to take the opportunity here to create a shift that we wouldn't have otherwise. On a soul level, we'd be just in our own space, our own family group, our own place. Here we have to interact with all these other energies that are not who we are. It gives us the ability to, an opportunity I should say, to see how we react to it, how we relate to it. Do we really see God everywhere, or do we only see it in our own space? How do we do things? And so we all have those challenges as we go through the journey of life.
What about reincarnation?
What about it?
You said that when a person passes away, the soul goes on to the next world, and it's stuck there. However, there are neshamas that have to, sometimes there are neshamas that have to come back to rectify something. Which is, and
yes,
so they're reincarnated.
There are souls that come back, and they come back either they're born into a body, or there are a lot of souls that come back not being born into a body, but they join people as people are going through certain experiences. So let's say you passed away and didn't have a certain experience. Well, someone else may be going through it, and you'll join them through that experience. When they finish, you leave. So a lot of people are actually not aware of the souls that join them as they're going through their journey. That's another part of it. So reincarnation is not a bad thing or wrong thing, or it doesn't mean you're not stuck in space. You're still stuck in what you have to do. You just put through another connection with this reality. And that's fine. Okay, any other questions? It's enough to think about? Okay, so I'll just make another comment.
Looking at it like a did book.
The Dibuk.
What book?
He said it sounds like a Dibuk, a soul that, how do you translate Dibuk? Something that comes into you while you're alive. But the difference is that this is not, these souls that come in, you don't know they're in there. You have, there occasionally you can know about such souls. It's possible to be aware that souls come in, but for the most part people are not. And these souls come in, do not interfere with what you're doing. So that's why you don't know they're there. They're just there to have the experience while you're going through it. And then they leave. So that's why there's no need for you to be aware, so you're not aware. It's like there's no need for people to know their past lives. Occasionally it might help. For the most part it's not necessary, because you have to be focused on the present. And if you focus on the present and you fix the present, all the past gets fixed. You don't need to know the past. So many times knowing the past can actually interfere with what you have to do, because you get so focused on that issue or that idea or that connection, and you don't see the things in front of you. So knowing can be blinding in that case sometimes as well. So anyway, in this verse, until now everything is flowing from the desire of the Creator. And now, this flow that's been happening needs a balance. So balance is brought forth so that this flow becomes aligned, realigned with the flow for its creative purpose. Not the flow that it exists for itself, but for what it's here. And many times things happen to us, so we come places, we do things, we don't know why we're here, we don't know, but at some later point, we learn why we're here. We're here, it takes us to that place. The understanding is that at each level of creation, a new balance that emanates from the original wisdom has to be brought forth to rebalance each level, to make sure that it's going towards the purpose of what it's created. At this new level of revelation, all is still working in one. It's all in the thought of the Creator, so it's still together as one. In each instance of creation that demands balance, the perfection lies in applying the exact amount of force. There's a tremendous energy in creation, and you have to apply the right amount of energy flow in each case so it doesn't crack up, it doesn't, something else doesn't happen. And because whenever you use force, it's a problem if it's not a natural flow. If it's a natural flow, everything moves. If it's not a natural flow and you force something, you create some imbalance. Many times people want to force things, and the thing they want to force may be correct, but it may not be the right moment, the right time. You have to sometimes let things take their journey. And if you don't, you create a different imbalance. Like the Jews who wanted to leave Egypt before its time, they were killed. And there were other Jews killed later when they did things not in the right time. They didn't wait. They knew it was the right thing, but they didn't understand you have to wait for God's time as well. Thus, every specific type of boundary that we have is also used in a way to lighten the force that it's needed. So while boundary is a limiting thing, it can be a rigidity, but it also lightens what happens. It removes certain energies and flows so you can focus better on where you have to be. And I think with that, that'll be enough for tonight. Okay? And I want to thank everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Hope you all enjoyed it.
Yes.